Before it is too late, hear this message: how Jesus can completely change your life today, restore your hope, heal your heart, and lead you into true purpose. Before you scroll away, before your mind gets distracted, and before another day passes unchanged, listen carefully, because this message is not an accident. You are hearing it now because your life matters more than you realize, and deep inside your heart you already know that something is missing. Even if you cannot explain it, you have tried to stay strong, you have tried to stay busy, you have tried to stay positive, but still there are moments when the silence becomes loud and questions rise. Questions about purpose, meaning, future, and peace. And it is in this moment that Jesus is calling you, not with condemnation, not with fear, but with love and truth. My beloved child, this world may have told you that you are alone, that you must fight everything by yourself, that your worth depends on success, money, or approval, but Jesus tells you something completely different. He tells you that you are seen, known, loved, and chosen even before you ever thought about Him. He knows your past, the mistakes you regret, the nights you cried silently, and the fears you hide behind a smile, and yet He still calls you His own, because His love is not based on performance but on grace. Today Jesus wants to change your life, not tomorrow, not someday, but today, not by making everything instantly easy, but by giving you a new heart, a new direction, and a new strength that does not depend on circumstances. Many people think they need to fix themselves before coming to Jesus, but the truth is you come as you are. Broken, tired, confused, and He does. The restoring transformation does not begin when your life becomes perfect, it begins when you surrender control and say, Lord, I need you. This message is for the person who feels stuck, for the person who feels tired of trying, for the person who wonders if things will ever change. Jesus specializes in impossible situations. He turns ashes into beauty, weakness into strength, fear into faith, and chaos into peace. But He will not force Himself into your life. He stands at the door and knocks, patiently waiting for your response. When you invite Him in, everything changes, not always immediately on the outside, but deeply and permanently on the inside, because when Jesus enters your life, He gives you a purpose bigger than pain, hope stronger than fear, and peace deeper than circumstances. Your past no longer defines you, your failures no longer own you, and your future is no longer uncertain, because your life is now anchored in Him. Today Jesus is offering you a choice, not religion, not routine, but relationship, a living connection that renews your mind, heals your heart, and teaches you how to live with courage, clarity, and confidence even in a broken world. This is not just a motivational message, this is a call to life, a call to truth, and a call to transformation, because when Jesus becomes the center of your life, you stop merely surviving and you begin truly living. As you continue listening, let your heart stay open, because what Jesus offers is not a temporary emotional lift, but a complete inner renewal that reshapes how you see yourself, how you face struggles, and how you walk through life. Many people spend years chasing happiness through achievements, relationships, or distractions, only to realize that peace cannot be produced by external success, because the soul was never designed to be satisfied by temporary things. Jesus speaks directly to that emptiness within you and says, come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest, not the rest of escape, but the rest of assurance, the rest that comes from knowing your life has meaning beyond survival. When Jesus enters your life, He does not erase responsibility, He gives you strength to carry it. He does not remove challenges, He gives you courage to face them and wisdom to overcome them, and most importantly, He changes the foundation of your identity so you are no longer driven by fear, rejection, or comparison, but by truth, love, and purpose. Many people remain trapped because they believe the lie that their past disqualifies them, but Jesus rewrites stories. He takes broken beginnings and creates powerful futures. He looks at who you are becoming, not who you used to be, and He invites you into a journey where growth is steady, healing is real, and transformation is ongoing. When you walk with Jesus, your mindset changes, because you stop asking why me and start asking what are you teaching me your reactions change because peace begins to guard your heart even when situations are difficult, and your direction changes because you are no longer living randomly but intentionally guided by faith instead of fear. Jesus teaches you how to stand firm when life shakes you, how to forgive when bitterness tries to take root, and how to keep moving forward even when the path feels uncertain. He reminds you that your value is not determined by opinions, failures, or delays, but by the fact that you are deeply loved by God Himself. And once you understand that truth, confidence replaces insecurity, clarity replaces confusion, and hope replaces despair. This is why a life with Jesus is not weak, passive, or boring. It is disciplined, purposeful, and powerful because it is anchored in eternal truth, not temporary emotion. When you trust Jesus, you learn to walk step by step, not knowing everything but knowing the one who leads you, and that changes everything, because when your life is led by Jesus, even the waiting seasons have purpose. The painful seasons bring growth, and the silent seasons build faith. You stop rushing ahead and you stop giving up too early because you trust that God's timing is perfect and His plan is greater than your understanding. This message is reaching you because you are not meant to live stuck, tired, or directionless. Jesus is calling you higher, not in pride but in purpose, not in pressure but in peace. And as you continue listening, your heart will begin to recognize that this is not just information, it is invitation, an invitation to leave behind fear, guilt, and confusion and step into a life guided by faith, strengthened by truth, and sustained by hope. Because when Jesus becomes the center of your life, everything else begins to align, not instantly, not effortlessly, but meaningfully and permanently. As this truth begins to settle into your heart, it is important to understand that following Jesus is not about escaping reality but about being empowered to face it with a renewed mind and an unshakable spirit, because real faith does not deny pain, it overcomes it. Jesus never promised a life without trouble, but He promised a life that would never be without His presence, and that promise alone changes how you walk through hardship. When storms arise, instead of collapsing under pressure, you learn to stand with calm assurance, because you know that nothing touches your life without purpose. When Jesus leads, you begin to understand that delays are not punishments but preparations, and setbacks are not defeats but redirections, shaping your character, strengthening your patience, and refining your faith. Many people quit too soon because they mistake silence for absence, but Jesus is often doing His deepest work in seasons when you feel nothing yet. He is building endurance, discernment, and inner strength that cannot be taken from you when circumstances change. This is why trusting Jesus requires maturity, not emotion, because faith continues even when feelings fluctuate, and obedience remains even when clarity is limited. As you walk with Jesus, you slowly recognize how He transforms your thought patterns, replacing negative cycles with truth, fear-based reactions with peace, and self-doubt with confidence rooted in identity, not ego. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of life and begin to see yourself as a steward of purpose, entrusted with time, talent, and influence. You start choosing discipline over distraction, growth over comfort, and obedience over convenience, because you understand that short-term pleasure often steals long-term purpose. Jesus teaches you that consistency matters more than intensity, and faithfulness matters more than visibility. And when you live this way, your life becomes stable, not because problems disappear but because your foundation is strong even in moments of weakness. Jesus does not shame you, He strengthens you. He does not abandon you, He restores you, and every time you fall, He invites you to rise again, wiser, humbler, and more resilient than before. This journey changes how you treat people, because grace you receive becomes grace you extend, forgiveness becomes a lifestyle, humility becomes strength, and love becomes your language. You stop needing validation because you are secure in truth, and you stop competing because you understand your path is unique. And comparison only distracts you from purpose. When Jesus leads your life, your priorities shift, your time gains meaning, your energy gains direction, and your decisions gain clarity because you are no longer reacting. As your understanding deepens, you begin to realize that walking with Jesus is not about perfection but about direction, because growth is measured not by how flawless you appear but by how faithfully you continue moving forward even when progress feels slow. Jesus never demands instant maturity, he invites daily surrender, and it is in that daily choice to trust him that your life begins to shift from confusion to clarity. Many people feel exhausted not because life is too hard but because they are carrying burdens they were never meant to carry alone. Jesus invites you to lay those burdens down: anxiety about the future, guilt from the past, pressure to prove yourself, and fear of failure. And when you do, something powerful happens. Your soul begins to breathe again. You start realizing that peace is not the absence of problems but the presence of God within them. Jesus teaches you how to remain calm when others panic, how to stay grounded when circumstances shake, and how to move forward when the path ahead seems unclear, because your confidence is no longer rooted in outcomes but in trust. As you grow in this walk, your priorities begin to realign. You become more intentional with your time, more mindful of your choices, and more aware of the influence your life carries. You stop wasting energy on things that drain your spirit and start investing in things that build your faith, because you understand that every decision shapes your future, even the small unseen ones. Jesus teaches you discipline not as restriction but as freedom, because when your life is guided by truth, you are no longer controlled by impulse, emotion, or distraction. You begin to develop spiritual resilience, the ability to endure disappointment without bitterness, to experience success without pride, and to walk through uncertainty without fear. This is where many people experience real change, not when everything feels good but when they remain faithful even when it does not, because perseverance is what transforms belief into character. Jesus also begins to heal areas within you that you may have ignored, wounds that affected your trust, habits that weakened your focus, and patterns that kept you stuck. And he does this gently, patiently, and with purpose, reminding you that healing is not about erasing the past but redeeming it and using it to build wisdom, strength, and compassion. Your story begins to carry meaning, not because it was easy but because it was surrendered, and through that surrender your life becomes a testimony not spoken loudly but lived consistently, showing others that peace is possible, purpose is real, and hope is alive when your life is anchored in Christ. This journey continues, unfolding layer by layer, teaching you that true strength is found in humility, true confidence is found in identity, and true success is found in obedience. And as you continue walking with Jesus, you realize that the greatest miracle is not a changed situation but a changed heart that remains steady, faithful, and hopeful no matter what life brings next. As this journey continues, you begin to understand that a life led by Jesus is not driven by emotion but grounded in conviction, because feelings change but truth remains, and when truth becomes your anchor, your life gains stability even in uncertain seasons. Jesus teaches you to live from the inside out, meaning your inner life, your thoughts, beliefs, and values shape your outer reality far more than circumstances ever could. This is why transformation with Jesus is lasting, because it begins at the root, not the surface. You start recognizing how your thoughts influence your choices, and your choices shape your destiny, and Jesus gently guides you to renew your mind, replacing fear-based thinking with faith-centered truth, scarcity with trust, bitterness with forgiveness, and doubt with assurance. You learn that spiritual growth is not loud or dramatic. Most of the time it is quiet, consistent, and unseen, like roots growing deep beneath the surface, strengthening you for future storms. This is where Many people lose patience because they want quick results, but Jesus is more interested in building depth than speed, because depth sustains you when pressure increases. As you walk this path, you begin to experience a new kind of freedom, not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to do what is right without feeling trapped by impulse addiction or approval. You stop being controlled by the need to impress people or prove your worth, because your identity is secure in Christ, and that security produces confidence without arrogance, peace without passivity, and strength without hardness. Jesus teaches you how to navigate relationships with wisdom, how to set boundaries without guilt, love without compromise, and forgive without becoming vulnerable to harm. You begin to see people through compassion rather than judgment, understanding that everyone is fighting battles you cannot see, and this awareness softens your heart while strengthening your character. Your life becomes less reactive and more intentional, less chaotic and more focused, because you are no longer drifting through days but walking with direction even when the destination is not fully visible. Jesus also trains you to endure seasons of waiting without losing faith, because waiting is not wasted time. It is preparation time where patience is formed. Trust is tested and endurance is strengthened. You learn to trust God's timing even when it challenges your expectations, knowing that what He prepares in you matters just as much as what He prepares for you. This perspective changes how you view delay, disappointment, and difficulty, because instead of asking why is this happening, you begin asking how is this shaping me, and through that shift frustration gives way to growth, fear gives way to faith, and confusion gives way to clarity. Your life begins to reflect a steady confidence that does not come from having all the answers but from trusting the one who does. And as you continue surrendering daily, choosing obedience over comfort, faith over fear, and purpose over pressure, you realize that Jesus is not only leading you forward, He is transforming you into someone who can carry the future He has planned with wisdom, humility, and strength. And that realization alone fills your heart with hope, courage, and renewed commitment to keep walking, no matter how long the journey takes. As you continue walking this path with Jesus, you begin to realize that true growth often happens when life feels ordinary, not dramatic, because consistency in faith is what builds strength over time. Jesus teaches you how to remain faithful when no one is watching, how to keep choosing integrity when shortcuts are available, and how to keep trusting even when results are not immediate, because character is formed in moments of quiet obedience, not public recognition. You start understanding that every small decision matters: the words you speak, the thoughts you entertain, the habits you build, and the attitudes you carry, because these shape the direction of your life more than one big moment ever could. Jesus invites you into a life of intentional living where you no longer drift emotionally or spiritually but live with awareness, purpose, and responsibility, guided by truth rather than impulse. As this awareness grows, you become more disciplined with your time, more careful with your energy, and more selective with influences, because you understand that what you allow into your mind eventually shapes your heart, and what shapes your heart directs your life. Jesus helps you break cycles that once kept you stuck, patterns of fear, procrastination, negativity, or self-sabotage, not through force but through truth, replacing lies with clarity and confusion with conviction. You begin to see challenges not as signs of failure but as opportunities to practice faith, patience, and endurance, because you trust that God uses pressure to strengthen, not destroy, those who remain surrendered. This perspective gives you resilience when things do not go your way, and humility when they do, because you recognize that both success and struggle are teachers when your life is anchored in Christ. Jesus also teaches you how to stand firm in your identity so that criticism does not crush Praise does not inflate you and uncertainty does not derail you. You stop looking to people for validation because your worth is settled and secure, and this security allows you to love freely, serve sincerely, and lead courageously without fear of rejection or loss. As you mature spiritually, you also develop discernment, the ability to recognize what aligns with God's will and what quietly pulls you away, helping you make wise choices even when options look attractive on the surface. This discernment protects your peace, guards your purpose, and strengthens your walk, because you are no longer led by emotion alone but by wisdom shaped through relationship with Jesus. And as this part of your journey unfolds, you begin to understand that true fulfillment does not come from achieving more but from aligning more. As this message moves deeper toward its purpose, Jesus invites you to recognize that the greatest transformation is not something you chase but something you allow, because surrender opens doors effort alone never can. And when you fully place your trust in Him, you begin to live from rest rather than strain, from confidence rather than fear, and from purpose rather than pressure. Jesus teaches you that your life is not measured by how fast you move or how much you achieve, but by how faithfully you walk in alignment with truth, love, and obedience. You learn to release control over outcomes and focus instead on faithfulness in action, trusting that God oversees results in ways you cannot predict or manage. This perspective frees you from anxiety and empowers you to live fully present, attentive, and purposeful in each moment. As you continue forward, Jesus calls you to live courageously, not loudly, not aggressively, but steadily, with conviction, knowing who you are and whose you are. He strengthens your ability to endure uncertainty without losing hope, to face opposition without losing peace, and to experience success without losing humility, because your foundation is no longer fragile, it is anchored in eternal truth. You begin to understand that your life has influence beyond what you see, that your consistency matters, your choices echo, and your faithfulness leaves impact even when applause is absent. Jesus also prepares you to carry responsibility with wisdom, understanding that greater purpose requires greater maturity and greater trust. You stop asking for easier paths and start asking for stronger character, because you now understand that strength sustains blessing and wisdom preserves progress. This is where your faith becomes unshakable, not because life becomes predictable but because your trust becomes rooted. You no longer fear the future because you trust the one who holds it. You no longer regret the past because you see how God has redeemed it, and you no longer rush the present because you recognize its value in shaping who you are becoming. Jesus invites you to live as a light, not by perfection but by authenticity, reflecting hope, patience, and integrity in a world desperate for stability and truth. And as you accept this calling, your life gains a quiet authority, a peaceful confidence, and a resilient joy that does not depend on circumstances. This is the life Jesus offers, not a life without challenges but a life without confusion, about meaning, not a life without struggle but a life without hopelessness. And as you continue this journey, choosing daily surrender, obedience, and trust, you step into a future guided by purpose, sustained by grace, and secured by love, knowing with certainty that Jesus walks with you, leads you, and remains faithful to complete the work He began in you and through you, now and forever. As this walk with Jesus deepens even further, you begin to recognize that true spiritual strength is revealed not when life is easy but when pressure increases, and yet your heart remains steady, because maturity in faith produces endurance, not escape. Jesus teaches you how to remain rooted when outcomes are uncertain, how to stay faithful when recognition is absent, and how to keep trusting when progress feels invisible, because faith that lasts is built on truth, not emotion. You learn to guard your Inner life, carefully understanding that peace is protected through wisdom, discipline, and intentional choices rather than chance. You become more aware of what you allow into your mind because you realize that repeated thoughts shape beliefs and beliefs shape actions, and Jesus gently guides you to replace mental noise with truth, replacing anxiety with trust, comparison with contentment, and fear with confidence rooted in His promises. This internal alignment changes how you experience life because external chaos no longer controls internal peace. You stop rushing to fix everything and start trusting God to work through time, patience, and obedience. Jesus also teaches you to carry responsibility without carrying unnecessary pressure, reminding you that you are called to be faithful, not perfect, diligent, not anxious, and obedient, not overwhelmed. This understanding frees you from constant self-criticism and performance-driven living, allowing you to serve, grow, and lead from a place of rest rather than exhaustion. Your faith becomes resilient, flexible, and grounded, enabling you to adapt without compromising truth and to face uncertainty without losing hope. You begin to As you move further into this transformed way of living, you start to understand that walking with Jesus is not about reaching a final moment of arrival, but about daily becoming more aligned with truth, purpose, and love, because growth in faith is progressive, unfolding layer by layer over time. Jesus teaches you to remain teachable no matter how much you have learned, and humble no matter how far you have come, because humility keeps your heart open and pride quietly limits growth. You learn to embrace correction without resentment, instruction without resistance, and waiting without frustration, because you trust that God's wisdom is greater than your understanding and His timing wiser than your urgency. This trust allows you to remain calm when plans change, peaceful when expectations shift, and hopeful when outcomes differ from what you imagined. You begin to see that true confidence is not loud or defensive, but secure and steady, rooted in identity rather than achievement, and this security allows you to take responsibility without fear and leadership without control. Jesus also deepens your compassion, helping you understand that people around you are shaped by unseen struggles and silent battles, and this awareness softens your heart while strengthening your discernment, enabling you to love without enabling and to serve without losing boundaries. Your life becomes balanced, steady, and intentional, reflecting maturity rather than intensity, and conviction rather than impulse. And as this balance grows, you realize that faith is not about escaping the world but engaging it with wisdom, grace, and courage, becoming a living example of hope, stability, and truth in environments marked by confusion, fear, and instability. Your perseverance becomes evidence, your peace becomes influence, and your consistency becomes testimony, showing others that following Jesus produces not a perfect life but a grounded, meaningful, and purposeful one. And as you continue forward, you remain confident that every step taken in obedience is shaping a future that aligns with God's design, because the one who called you is faithful to guide, sustain, and complete the work He began in you. And this assurance gives you strength to keep walking, patience to keep trusting, and courage to keep believing no matter how long the journey takes. As you move deeper into this walk with Jesus, you begin to understand that true faith reshapes how you face the future, because fear loses its grip when trust takes its place. Jesus teaches you to live one day at a time without being consumed by tomorrow's worries or yesterday's regrets, reminding you that grace is given daily, not all at once, and strength is supplied when needed, not in advance. This awareness frees you from constant anxiety and teaches you how to stay present, faithful, and grounded. Even when the future feels uncertain, you learn that God's guidance is often revealed step by step, not all at once, so that dependence grows and pride fades. Jesus uses uncertainty to draw you closer, not to confuse you but to deepen your trust, because when you do not have all the answers, you lean more fully on Him, and that dependence becomes your strength. As this maturity develops, you stop rushing outcomes and start valuing obedience. You understand that being faithful matters more than being fast. And being aligned matters more than being ahead. Jesus trains your heart to value progress over perfection, teaching you that falling does not disqualify you, quitting does. But even then His mercy invites you back. You begin to walk with humility, knowing you are growing yet still learning, confident yet still dependent, strong yet still surrendered. And this balanced faith produces stability, peace and resilience that cannot be shaken by circumstances, because your foundation is no longer emotional. It is eternal and rooted in Christ alone. At this stage of your journey you begin to realize that your life carries responsibility, not pressure but purpose, because growth always brings stewardship. Jesus does not strengthen you just for personal peace, but so that you can become a light to others who are still struggling, searching and tired. You learn that influence is not about position or popularity, but about consistency, integrity and love expressed daily through how you live, speak and serve. Your life begins to quietly inspire others. Not because you are perfect, but because you are real, steady and anchored in truth. Jesus teaches you that leadership starts with self-control, service begins with humility and impact begins with obedience.